I think Mondraker has tried to trick us with this bike.
Do you know the saying, you catch a liar faster than a lame man?
Well, as soon as you get on the bike, you realize it's not what they had explained to us.
Stay in the video because I'm going to give you all the details.
Today we'll discuss the Mondraker Arid, which along with the Dusty e-bike, are the first bikes from the Alicante factory not focused on mountain biking. So pay attention to this, it's important. Mondraker took its time entering the gravel world, but it's arrived with a strong proposal. I've been testing the RR-SL, the top model, for months, this one here. And it's a bike that, on paper, comes equipped with the best components currently available on the market. As soon as you get on the bike, you get a very different feeling of position, of everything. And honestly, it made me think with the guy that this bike is some kind of mythological creature. Let's take a Minotaur as an example, half person, half bull. Let's analyze the technical features of the bike and I'll explain right away, hey, why does this bike have the comparison to a mythological creature? We're mainly discussing a carbon frame and fork made from their usual high quality carbon. Mondraker with some shapes, as you can see, that are quite interesting. A relatively tall head tube with a pretty robust fork with 3 mounting points on each side for possible panniers, bike packing and so on. A top tube with a lot of looping, very flat and with up to 3 mounts on the top tube. Then we have an internal cavity in the down tube to carry supplies, raincoats, whatever we need. On the bottom, right in front of the bottom bracket, we have a protector that also comes with 2 more bolts, so you can mount something there. I don't know, a 3rd bottle cage, etc. What else? The design features very low seat stays, as you can see. With these special shapes, they make near the seat tube, which promise to absorb a lot of the vibrations picked up by the rear axle of the bike.
A seat post with a 27.2, it's a traditional round-on-off seat post with a diameter of 27.2 millimeters with a perforation that's also designed to absorb vibrations.
A threaded bottom bracket, a T47 and a maximum tire clearance of 50 millimeters. The bike comes equipped with the SR-AM Explore 13 speed with the new Zip 303 Explore 54 millimeters. From the side, on the wheel, a Physicargo as the saddle and all the other components are from on-off Mondraker's component brand. I'm going to make a special mention of this stem combination. Plus, the handlebar is practical for assembly and disassembly even though it lacks full internal cable routing. Well, it's true that it does end up keeping the cables pretty well hidden, but it still gives us the option, as I said, to assemble and disassemble, change the stem, the handlebar, whatever we want in an easy and practical way. The geometry maintains Mondraker's signature forward philosophy, with a long reach that's combined with a very short stem. And in addition, it teams up with a very large wheelbase. Why do I think that Mondraker has tried to trick us, in quotes, with this bike? Or put another way, because Mondraker tried to make us believe? What went against their true DNA with the ARID? Well, basically because in all their communications, in their press releases, in their videos, they try to tell us that this was a machine designed for adventure, for bikepacking even. If you watch the 2-minute promotional video for this model, you'll see that only a few seconds are dedicated to a girl who appears with a race number, pretending to participate in a race. The rest of the video then is a guy with a bunch of backpacks, the same girl going around the city and so on, right? And it's like, are we going to see? When I saw that video, I thought, we're talking about Mondraker. These people only know how to make competition beasts, machines that go really fast. So it's like I couldn't believe that Mondraker had created a snail. Let's put it that way. When you get on the ARID for the first time, it's true that you get the feeling of a very high front with a lot of comfort. If we add this to the mounts on the fork, it might lead you to mistakenly think, well, this is a globetrotter bike. But as soon as you accelerate and push it a little at high speeds, that's when the true character of the racing bike really comes out, which is hidden in there. To put it to the test under these speed conditions, what I did some time ago was take it to one of the events organized by Velodrome. which is precisely a group of very strong people with 100% racing bikes who go out to ride in the mountains with the sole objective of pushing each other to the limit.
It was a total bumpy ride, but before this, yes. Thank you.
Now I want to tell you why I call it Minotaur, because the bike can actually be split in two, okay? The front is designed for adventure, while the rear focuses on speed. Let's focus on this part now, because obviously we'll notice it has a relatively high head tube, and in this test unit it also comes with a lot of spacers. The test units, I can't cut the fork tube to the height I want, so it feels even taller. A pretty robust fork, more designed for bike packing with those mounts and so on. And above all, the stock setup comes with a 44 Shimamito handlebar, which is extremely wide. Nobody in races uses handlebars this massive. But they're very useful when you're going bike packing because you can't fit the typical giant handlebar bag up here in front, right? And finally, a 40-tooth single chainring, which is unusual since bike packing bikes typically use smaller chainrings. Exactly, that's what it's for. To maintain a higher cadence and better manage the extra backpack weight. Alright, that's the adventure so far.
Everything that follows is full speed and competition, since it starts with an integrated quark power meter.
Then we have the 3-speed cassette, the Explore 1046, which is obviously designed for competition. We have, of course, the zip wheels from the Explore 303 with a 54mm rim profile and a 32mm internal width. In other words, they're 100% made for going really fast. The frame's very low seat stays are designed to boost responsiveness. It's a bike that accelerates insanely fast, and that's something we 100% need in the world of competition. And then there's everything related to the geometry. Forward. That long reach, combined with a short wheelbase for competition, gives you a lot of stability at high speeds. You need that in competition, but less so in adventure or bike packing. And of course, the weight is very, very competitive. The interesting thing here is that the Arid feels much more like a competition bike that you can take on an adventure, and not like it was advertised as an adventure bike that you could occasionally put a race number on. The bike clearly asks you for acceleration, it asks for speed, it wants you to go fast. It's amazing how quick it feels. So, why Mondraker?
Why did you design this bike like this?
Or above all, why did you equip it with certain features that make it more adventurous? Let's put it that way. Well, basically because Mondraker arrived a bit later than other brands to the gravel segment, and things are happening very quickly, especially in this field. If we take as an example the brand, which I think is a pioneer in the gravel scene. For example, Ridley also entered the market with a single bike, a bit versatile for everything 7 years ago. Today they have developed their gravel range so much that they have up to 7 different models to target each of the gravel sub-niches. Whether it's competition gravel, aero gravel, gravel mountain bike, adventure gravel, gravel mixed with city, and so on and so on and so on. Brands like Trek, for example, spent years with only one model in their catalog and are just now expanding. One more adventurous, the other more competitive. Exactly the same thing that's happening with Norbia, and we see that it's a path brands are following. Mondraker will probably get there too. But the logical step to enter this sector was to go for a model that could cover it in the best possible way. The maximum number of areas possible. So this ARID, how do we classify it? I would tell you that is the most versatile gravel bike, more fast gravel that I've ever tried. Why? Well, because in general, brands, when they've released a single model, have focused it much more. Technically, we focus on adventure since its sales potential is much greater than in the competition segment. Competition is a smaller niche. What happens here? That obviously the marketing team at Mondraker tries to position the bike in that bigger adventure niche, but in the end, it's a Mondraker. It can't give up its DNA. And it's a machine that clearly gives you signs that it wants to go really fast. So for those who are looking to cover the maximum possibilities with a single mount, this is a very good option. If you're thinking about putting a number plate on it quite regularly, but without giving up, someday to go bikepacking or on a small adventure. For the ideal balance, keep the bike as it comes from the factory. If you want to turn this into a real bullet, 100% adapted for competition, then you'll probably need to look for a narrower handlebar, a bigger chainring, and maybe a flipped stem to improve the rider's aerodynamic position. But just a few changes to really make it a true race number beast. If you want a pure adventure bike, just load it with bags. Thanks and happy bikepacking. Now let's discuss pros and cons, beginning with what I disliked. And I'm really sorry, because I know this particular component is really hyped up among the public right now. But personally, I have to say that these Zip 303 Explore for me fall on the negative side of the scale. On one hand, they're limited to very few compatible tire models for now. And on the other hand, I think their overall performance is far below what the rest of the bike, especially the frame, offers. On the other hand, the issue of the storage cavity is sometimes when you try to take something out, it can be complicated because the lid doesn't come off the frame completely. It just rotates, it turns, and that limits the space you have to maneuver. By putting your hand in, you take out the little bags that already come included, up to 3 different bags with the Mondraker logo. And on some occasions, I found that it's been really hard for me to take the stuff out. And finally, the rear part of the bike, which in general, Mondraker told us was very well thought out and designed to be very absorbent. Something that's really necessary when it comes to gravel. Well, at least for me, the feeling I've had has been quite the opposite, that it's a pretty stiff bike in this rear part. And if we move on to things that I did like, I'll start precisely with the rear triangle. Just as we have a downside, we also have an advantage. And that's because the bike, thanks to these really low seat stays, feels super responsive. It's built for acceleration, giving it a distinct character when riding from what we might find in other models. On the other hand, we have the matter of really super stable handling, even at very high speeds, like all the Mondrakers I've tried. And this is especially important in gravel riding because you usually go at very high speeds. When you're competing, when you're on the slope, with your race number on, the aesthetics, I have to mention, is a bike that, like most Mondrakers, stands out in this regard. And for me, that's a positive thing. The weight. Super competitive, and from my point of view, in terms of components, the 13-speed Explore is really well done and gives the bike an extra edge. Who do I recommend this bike to? Mainly 2 types of cyclists. The first group is those who are new to gravel and still aren't sure what kind of gravel riding they want to pursue. This bike lets you do everything, so you can't go wrong. And the second group, as I mentioned before, would be those people who want a single bike to cover as many possibilities as possible. Do a little race, go on some adventures, or even, I would say, try out road cycling with a group and so on. Maybe with slick tires, you can do it perfectly with this bike. In fact, the members of the Mondraker factory team
from cross country, I'm about to crash. Sorry, some rough routes just popped up.
So as I was saying, the riders of the Mondraker Factory Cross Country World Cup team use this bike for their road training. So that's how it is. Now it's your turn to decide. Share your score for this bike from 1 to 10 in the comments.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, because that way you'll help me grow the project.
Give the video a big like if you enjoyed it. Stay happy, see you next time. Bye.